All right, guys, in this video, we are going to talk all about emotional eating and what you can do to stop using food as your main way to cope with your emotions, how to stop eating your feelings, and if you think you don't eat emotionally, be sure to stick around to the end because you might be changing your tune. Emotional eating is something that a lot of us struggle with because honestly, a lot of times it's easier to turn to food to cheer us up than it is to actually feel our emotions. What I want to do in this video is I want to give you very clear, very actionable steps, the exact steps that I teach to society members in order to implement this and to overcome emotional eating. We're going to get right to the point. We're going to dive on in. So if you guys are excited, be sure to give this video a thumbs up, hit subscribe, and hit the little bell to be notified every time a new video is uploaded. Okay, so like I said, we have an entire lesson on this inside of my exclusive membership community, the society, where I teach you all of the things, and we have an entire, like I said, lesson on emotional eating. Basically, the first thing you need to know is that emotional eating is a spectrum. Emotional eating itself is not bad and it can be normal, but here's the deal. So there's on the one end of the spectrum, emotional eating could be you're at a birthday party and you are enjoying cake and you're maybe not necessarily hungry, but you are celebrating and you're enjoying it. That's part of emotional eating, okay? And then you kind of go further along on the spectrum and maybe you have a brownie and you're like, oh, today's a crummy day. This brownie is going to give me a pick-me-up. There's not necessarily anything wrong with that. It's just that the brownie is not going to fix your bad day, but it's okay for it to give you a pick-me-up. And then you kind of go further along on the spectrum and you start to use food as your main way to cope with your emotions, or you use it as a way to try to not feel your emotions and to try to kind of numb them. The first thing that I just really want to point out is that emotional eating itself is not necessarily a bad thing, and I don't want you to beat yourself up if you feel like, oh my gosh, I did eat emotionally, or I wasn't necessarily hungry and I had the cookie. Like, that's okay. I think the first thing, like I said, make sure that you know it's a spectrum and that sometimes emotional eating, like I said, it could be having birthday cake at a birthday party. I would not deprive myself of that. I would celebrate that, and that's part of normal life. Just wanted to clarify and get that out of the way. What I teach society members is to first create yourself almost like an emotional eating toolkit. And here's what I mean by that. I want you to think about the emotions that you typically feel. And if you're not really sure what these are, you can kind of go through a day or a couple days and say, okay, what are the things, just kind of jot them down as they come up that you feel. Do you feel stress? Do you feel anxiety? Do you feel sadness? Do you feel boredom? All of those things. So just kind of like make a list of the emotions that you do feel. And then what I want you to do is I want you to brainstorm between 5 to 8 different things that you can do to handle those emotions. If it's stress, name 5 to 8 things that you can do to handle that stress. Maybe it's calling someone to talk it out on the phone. Maybe it's doing an adult coloring book. Guys, those are so soothing. Maybe it is writing in your journal. Maybe it's going for a leisurely walk. Brainstorm things that you can do to actually cope with that emotion. So what would relieve the stress? If you're feeling loneliness, what are some things that you can do to help with the actual loneliness? Is it, again, call a friend? Is it FaceTime with someone? Is it write a letter to someone? What are things that you can do? Again, we're focusing on that emotion that you're feeling, that loneliness. How can we cope with that? Okay, so that's really step number 1. Then step number 2 is really what to do when you feel the emotional eating coming on. We use in society what I call the emotional eating algorithm. I can put a picture up there for you. Guys, I get that eating should not be this complicated, that we need some sort of freaking algorithm to go through. That is what diet culture has made eating for us. Like, it's so bizarre and it should not have to be this way. And you don't necessarily have to use this algorithm forever, but it's a good starting place to kind of work through things. So let's go through it. The first thing that I want you to ask yourself is, am I hungry? Okay, because sometimes your body is going to be asking for food. So kind of always check in with that first. Like, if you need food, eat food, right? If you're not necessarily hungry and you're like, I just really want, maybe there's a plate of cupcakes or something, and you're like, am I going to be eating emotionally? So I'm not hungry. What am I feeling? That's step number 2, is to ask yourself, okay, what am I feeling right now? Are you feeling stressed? Are you feeling anxious? Are you feeling lonely? Kind of all those things that we talked about. Try to hone in on that, because sometimes sometimes that's a hard step in itself to actually feel your emotions, but it's something that the more that you practice it, the more that you're able to do it. It's okay if this is hard for you at first, but just know that with more practice and actually feeling your feelings, it's going to get easier. Once you've identified that feeling, then you go to the next step, which is going to be using that toolkit that we just created. And keep this running list, keep it accessible, screenshot it, keep a list in your phone. There's so many things that you can do to keep it available. So pick one of the things on your toolkit and work through it for, 5, 10, 15 minutes. Don't get too caught up in the time here. The key concept is you're just trying to work through that emotion, okay? Give yourself some time to work through it and then ask yourself, okay, do I still want, for instance, that plate of cookies? If you do still want that plate of cookies, own your choice to eat the freaking cookie, okay? So just say, I'm eating this cookie. And the key is that you want to stay present during this, because I think where it kind of gets rocky territory with emotional eating is when we check out, okay? Because a lot of times some of the feelings that we have, we don't necessarily want to feel. Like, I don't want to feel stressed. I don't want to feel lonely. So sometimes we feel like it's easier to just like check out of those emotions, and sometimes we use that food to do that. If you still want the cookie, you have some of that taste hunger. You guys know I've talked about taste hunger a lot. We talk about it a lot in the society when you just crave something. If you're having that taste hunger, own that choice to eat the cookie, but stay mindful, okay? And here's my number one mindful eating tip. It's so easy, you guys. Just ask yourself, how does this food taste? Instant mindfulness. You'll notice that you're like, wow, chocolate in this cookie tastes very rich. It tastes very decadent, versus if you're just eating the chocolate cookie, you're like, okay, I'm eating a chocolate cookie. Does it crumble? Is it chewy? Just really kind of ask yourself, what does this taste like? Like, what is the experience? Super simple. Do it anywhere. No one knows you're going to be doing it. You can even do it when your kids are running around. Just say, okay, how does this food taste? And it's going to allow you to be more able to listen to your hunger and fullness, be more able to listen to your satisfaction. It's great, you guys. I do it all the time. I have a whole video on mindful eating I can link up there for you that has a lot more ideas, but that's my easy go-to one. As you're eating mindfully, you're also going to want to check in, especially if it's just that taste hunger, with your fullness level. You can ask yourself, am I getting uncomfortably full? And just kind of check in with that, because a lot of times I think that's where people are like, yeah, well, I have this taste hunger, but then I'm so full at the end. That's where that mindful eating is going to help you more likely be able to honor that fullness and stop when you are comfortably full, because you can have that cookie anytime you want. With food freedom and intuitive eating, it's never off limits. Honestly, if you think about it, cookies are going to taste way better when you have some hunger and you some drive to eat it, versus when you're already full and it's like, oh, I know I'm not going to feel good after this, but I'm going to keep eating it. Keep that in mind. So then after you eat that, then I want you to kind of go back through it and check in with your emotions again and say, okay, how am I feeling? How's my stress or my anxiety or whatever that emotion that you were feeling was, or maybe a new emotion surfaced. And just make sure that you always go back to it, because like I said, it's okay to say, you know what? This brownie, this cookie, yesterday I had a Buckeye ball, those like chocolate peanut butter things. Guys, they're so good. Just because I was kind of feeling bummed, but I didn't expect that Buckeye ball to fix my sadness or my, bummed out mood, but it's okay for it to give me a pick me up, okay? So I think that that's the big difference, and that's something that we want to keep an eye on. So just really ask yourself, is this going to get to the root cause of the emotion that I'm feeling, or am I using it as a way to kind of sweep it under the rug? And like I said, it's hard to actually feel your feelings at first. I get it, but the more that you practice it, the more that you're able to work through those things. I think that if you're like, okay, well, how do I start working through that? You guys know I'm a big advocate of journaling. Just get your thoughts on paper, just non-judgmentally write it out. What are you feeling? What is causing you that anxiety? Honestly, my journal, let me grab it for you. So when I journal, you can probably read this, it's not going to make any sense, and that's okay, but the key is it gets my thoughts out of my head and keeps them from swirling around. I just feel a sense of clarity after. So just write it down, set the timer for like 5 minutes and just jot it down. It does not have to be a huge long thing, but just get those things out of your head. So like I said, that is literally the process that I teach society members. I mean, we're just like hitting the tip of the iceberg here, but that's really the process that I teach on how to handle emotional eating, how to stop using food as the sole way to cope with your emotions, and to really be able to work through those things. Now, if you are like Colleen, I am not an emotional eater, but I find myself eating all these foods past fullness just because they taste freaking good. Let me introduce you to something. I'm actually gonna pull it up on my computer here. Elise Resch, one of the co-authors of Intuitive Eating, has a very, very good article on, it's called The Sadness of Saying Enough, and I can link to it in the description. So she goes through this kind of like case study with one of her clients, and she says that he constantly eats past fullness, but he says, I don't go to food when I'm emotional or when I'm angry or I'm upset, but I have a hard time stopping because it just tastes so good. Basically what they talk through in this article is, in part of it, she asks him, she says, so if you're no longer hungry, but you go on eating, does your body actually need more food? And he said no. But she said that, okay, well, if your body's not needing more food, could there potentially be something else that this food is fulfilling? And basically it comes down to, he didn't want to stop because it tasted so good, and sometimes we feel sad when the food is gone, when we're not hungry anymore, and we avoid trying to feel that sadness, so we just keep eating. When in reality, there's almost like we have these two choices. You can feel sad because the food is gone or you're not hungry anymore, or you can feel sad because or angry or upset or frustrated, whatever, because you're so stuffed, because you don't feel comfortable anymore. And it's kind of like this catch-22. We feel that, okay, well, I'm sad, but I also don't want to necessarily feel super stuffed at the end of it. She talks about kind of just riding that emotion, that sadness, and wouldn't it feel great if we're able to, with intuitive eating and food freedom and what I teach in the society, no foods are off limits. You can have that food again, and won't it have a much more satisfying feeling taste to it when you're actually hungry again? So almost turning that into like excitement and saying, I can have this food again and it's going to be amazing, but I'm okay for now. It's okay for me to feel a little bit sad because it was really enjoyable, but knowing that that sadness that you feel is fleeting. And she talks about this. Here's a quote that explains it pretty good. He could either continue to eat beyond fullness and protect himself from the sadness that emerged if he stopped eating, or he could stop eating and feel the sadness, which he discovered only lasted a few moments. I feel like this article just really kind of shows like the nuances of emotional eating, and it's not just I'm angry, I go to food, I'm sad, I go to food. Just kind of think about that and ask yourself to dig deeper into, what the cause of eating more is, and is there that sadness there? And I really do think that you could kind of go through this emotional eating algorithm and kind of say, okay, if I'm feeling sad after the end of the meal, maybe I'll work through this, see how I can't, cope with that sadness. Maybe I journal, maybe I use mantras and affirmations, maybe I talk to someone about it, and then I'll come back knowing full right that honestly, if you want to finish, the whole plate, or if you want to go for seconds or thirds or fourths, you have the ability to do that, but you're giving yourself that choice to say, I'm making an empowered decision versus I'm using food as a way to kind of sweep other things under the rug. Does that make sense? Okay guys, like I said, that's really how I work through these things. I'll put that article in the description, but I just wanted this to be super actionable, cut to the point, what you can do to work through emotional eating. Let me know in the comments what some of the things that you're gonna do if you're stressed, anxious, some of those emotions, and start to share those, because sometimes we don't necessarily think about things that other people have ideas about. So share them in the description, and as always, let me know if you liked this video, and be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe down there. Also hit the little bell to be notified every time a new video is uploaded, and I'll also put the link to the society in the descriptions. There's currently a wait list, so be sure to hop on that and be notified when it opens next. But I will see you guys next week with another video. See you later.